On this tree stump, in a remote corner of Russia, Lenin would plot his revolution. A cataclysmic upheaval copied from Korea to Latin America, from China to Cuba. But it's here in St. Petersburg, then known as Petrograd, where it all started, with mounting frustration, poverty and an unpopular imperialist war. The bloody 1905 revolution had secured reform, but not enough to prevent the events of 1917.
Actually, it's very clear that no revolution is made by revolutionaries. Usually it's the old regime which makes everything for the revolution. Lenin simply used the opportunities, but it was very clear that people did want a very dramatic change.
In February, Imperial Russia collapsed with the abdication of the Tsar. A provisional government led by moderate Alexander Kerensky was created to maintain order until elections.
I wouldn't say that politicians convinced people to take part in revolution. Revolutions just happen. This is a social crisis where each part is fighting for its own ends.
But the Bolshevik movement gave individual struggles a unified front, with one man in particular leading the way. Lenin had been in exile for a decade. As head of the anti-Tsarist Bolshevik movement, he was an enemy of the state, but a friend of the people. Lenin and his party knew what they wanted. They would rise to the top on a wave of popularism. He secured passage from Switzerland to Russia on a sealed train. He bartered his way through Germany on the pretext, it's believed, that it would force Russia out of the war and ease a German win. In April, Lenin arrived here at Finlansky Station to a tumultuous reception. He took quick control of the Bolshevik movement and attempted to win over those disillusioned with the provisional government. But by summer, all the Bolsheviks found were bullets, arrests and mass deportations. Workers and soldiers clashed with government troops, but it was a bloody failure. Lenin was on the run. After the trauma of the July days, Lenin knew that he was enemy number one. He fled here to this tiny house in the village of Rasliv on the shores of a lake. And it's in these hallowed rooms where he worked out the next steps in the revolution. And when things got really bad, he'd row across the lake to this makeshift shelter. During those difficult days, he'd shaved off his iconic beard and wore a blonde wig and claimed to be a Finnish laborer.
Lenin always wanted to put his ideas into practice. Socialism was the dominating ideology. It didn't matter what the current conditions were. It helped him to stay here in this simple environment to tackle global issues.
But idealized images of Lenin hunched over his tree stump desk are a myth. He made revolutionary notes here for his later work, State and Revolution, and hid them in a haystack. After a brief spell back in Finland, at some point Lenin made the decision to pounce. He returned to this safe house in Petrograd, modern-day St. Petersburg, and in those dark, wet October days, it was declared the time was right. In the next program, join us as we see how the revolution was put into action with the storming of the Winter Palace and the handing over of power to the All-Russian Congress of Soviets.